Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi. Zevachim Peites. We begin a brand new perek, the 10th one, Kol HaTader. Many of us are familiar with the formula called Tader v'she'enoi tader, right? You have something which comes more frequently and something which comes less frequently. Which one do you do first? Which mitzvah takes priority? So it's tader versus enoi tader. The one that comes more often, tader koydem, that goes first. You can have this, for instance, on Hanukkah, right? You have a choice between doing Havdalah first or lighting the Hanukkah menorah first. So typically we apply the rule of tader v'she'enoi tader koydem, the item which is more common, the item which is more frequent, that takes priority. How do we know this halacha? It's from our Gemara, based on a pasuk, as we're going to see. So here we're speaking about karbanis. You have a choice. You can do this karban or this one. Which one comes first? It says the Mishnah, Kol HaTader mechaverit. The karban which is more tader, which comes more often. Rashi says, for instance, it's Rosh Chodesh, what happens to fall out on Shabbos. So which karban comes first? The Musaf of Shabbos or of Rosh Chodesh? The answer is Kol HaTader mechaverit. Koydem is chaverit. Shabbos, says Rashi, Shabbos which is more tader than Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos comes more often than Rosh Chodesh. That takes priority, that goes first. V'chein kulam, likewise, in the upcoming cases in the Mishnah as well, the tader goes first. First example is hatmidin koydem l'musafin. It's on Shabbos. Faced with a choice. Should I do the karban tamid first, which is a daily karban, very frequent, very common karban, or should I do the karban musaf, which is unique to Shabbos? Once again, the tamid. By the mere fact that it's more tadir, that gives it priority. Hatmidin koydem musafin. Now, if Rosh Chodesh happens to fall on Shabbos, and now it's no longer a choice between tamid and musaf. We dealt with that, but now it's a question of musaf versus musaf. Should I do the musaf of Shabbos first or Rosh Chodesh first? So once again, even within the musaf family, the more common one goes first. Musaf Shabbos, our koydem, they come before the musaf Rosh Chodesh. Likewise, if it's Rosh Hashanah, which happens to be Rosh Chodesh as well, and you're bringing two karbanis musaf, one for Rosh Hashanah, one for Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is more common, is more tader, is more frequent, right? Musaf Rosh Chodesh. Koydem musaf Rosh Hashanah. Shinam, how do we know that tader goes first? So we have the pasuk, which discusses the musafin of Pesach, and it says, "Shenemar milvad oilas habayker." You do the musaf karbanis aside, in addition to the morning karban, which happens to be the tamid, right? Asher loilas hatamid. So aside from that, in addition to that, after that one, which is the more common karban, because it's a daily karban tamid, tasu eseli, you proceed with these, which are the musafin. The Torah is teaching us to follow this rule, to follow this order. Tader takes priority over enoi tader. Asks the Gemara, Minalan, how do we know that tader goes first? What do you mean Minalan? Could the Karma Tama, we just quoted the pasuk, right? Malvad oilas habayker. That musaf follows the tamid, because the tamid is more tader. Well, you're right, says the Gemara, that's not what we want to know now. Maybe that pasuk. Yeah, when faced the choice of musaf or tamid, the tamid is certainly way more frequent than the musaf. I understand that the tamid comes first. But what about if it's musaf versus musaf, where the disparity of frequency isn't as wide? They're both not so common. They're both not daily. Perhaps the Shabbos is more common than Rosh Chodesh. So who says, when facing a choice between musaf and musaf, you'll still prioritize the one that's more frequent than the other one? That's taking the halacha to another level. Dilma, perhaps tmidin hein the kadmul musaf, and perhaps the tamid precedes the musaf because the tamid is very frequent daily karban. So they deserve that that first slot. But when it's musaf and musaf, who says this musaf over that musaf? Minal, how do we know that there are two? We go with the more common one first, Amar V'lo, the Makro. And that's why we have to move on to the next part of the pasuk. So the pasuk continues, right? Mulvad oilas haboker asher lo oilas hatamid tasu es eila, and then the next pasuk says ka'ela, like these tasu layoim shivas yamim. You're meant to bring 7 karbanos tasu layoim per day, right? Each one of the 7 days of Pesach will have these 7 karbanos. Ke'elo tasal yom shivas yomim. So we're speaking about karbanos musaf, the additional karbanos beyond the standard tamid. And the word ke'ela, in reference to the musaf, and tells you, it could have just said eila. It says ke'ela to tell you that likewise, in terms of sequencing the karbanos musaf, you follow the same model as stated earlier regarding the musaf versus the tamid, where the tamid comes first because of its greater frequency. Likewise, when ordering the musafin, the more common one goes first. So now we know whether it's musaf versus tamid or whether it's musaf versus musaf. We say tadir comes first. Asks the Gemara, well, you're sourcing it in the word ka'ela, the extra kaf. No, that's not an extra expression. It's needed for its own sake to tell you that in fact the karbanis musaf are a recurring phenomena brought during all 7 days of Pesach. Because, if only from that first pasuk, Tasu was Eila, would say, yeah, these are brought today on the first day of Pesach. Who says it's meant to be repeated throughout all 7 days? Comes Ka'ela and says, cut and paste, follow the same system throughout Yom Tov. So it's not an extra word. In Cain says the Gemara, no, because if it's only coming to teach us to repeat the musafin throughout the 7 days, nichtav eila tasul hayom. You could just say eila these tasul hayom. Do it on a daily basis, so it's recurring. Well, no, because of eila, if it only say eila tasul hayom, I would say that you take these 7 karbanos and split it throughout all 7 days, maybe one per day, right? Because of Eila Tasal Yom Shivas Hayamim, however, I would misapply it. Eila L'Shivas Hayamim, these 7 will be offered throughout the 7 days. But who's to say that you do 7 per day? Well, L'Yom Ksiv, it says Eila Tasal L'Yom, which indicates it's per day. It's a daily fare. Well, still, Vakati Ema, I can still say Eila L'Yom. These 7 are brought on the first day. But throughout the rest of the day, I'm not sure how many per day. And perhaps that's why it has to say Ka'ela. They meant to repeat the same system throughout all 7 days. It's not an extra expression. And there goes your source. Answers the Gemara, no. In order to teach that all 7 musafin are repeated throughout all 7 days. Amakra, for that the pasuk already says, Tasu. It says Ke'elo Tasu Layoim. And we learn from Tasu, Sheyu Kol Asiyos Shabbos, that whatever you do, it's all equal and the same. So just like the first day you bring 7 karbanos for Musaf, likewise, the same repeats itself on all 7 days. Hence, it leaves the word Ka, the letter Kaf of Ke'ela, as an extra expression to tell you that in terms of sequencing the Musafin, you follow the same formula as Musaf versus Tamid, which means to say that the more common one comes first. Abaya Amar, we go for the Kra. He says, you don't need an extra pasuk, Ka'ela, to teach you that the more common Musaf takes priority. We go for the Kra. It can be sourced from that same pasuk mentioned earlier. Right, instead of going to Ka'ela Tasal Hayom, go back to pasuk Chav Gimel. Because if it's only coming to teach that a tamid precedes a musaf, let the pasuk just say that you bring the musaf aside from the morning carbon, and of course we know it's the tamid. Asher, the extra words, asher tamid. What's the extra expression for? That this happens to be a tamid. Remember to tell you the Tadira Tikdum. To stress, to emphasize. Now the reason why the Talmud comes first is because it's more tadim, more common, more frequent. And the point here is to teach us that it's a universal formula, meant to be applied and exported in all situations. Such as choosing between two karbanos musaf. Okay, so bottom line is tadir v'she'enoi tadir kaidem, whether it's the Talmud coming before the musaf or a more frequent musaf coming before a less frequent one. So this is when both karbanos are sort of on the same level. So you employ the tadir system to give priority. Here comes another factor at play. Mekudesh. So let's say you have two karbanos of the same or similar frequency. In this case, which one do you choose first? We insert another factor called Mekudesh, the holier one, the more powerful one, the carbon with greater capacity to atone, etc. Kol HaMekudesh Mechaber, the one that contains more Kedusha, a higher level of sanctity. Kodim Mechaber precedes the other one, says Rashi. What does Mekudesh mean? Sheyesh bo yitzad riboy Kedusha mimenu, has a greater element of Kedusha, a more powerful carbon, a carbon at a higher level. For instance, suppose the kohen notices two bowls of blood, one of a chatas and one of an oila. Which one comes first? Dama chatas koidim, that comes before the dama oila. You know why? Meshu meratza, because the dama of the chatas has meratza capabilities. Rashi explains. It's mechaper. It atones for very severe sins, kares sins, which need a great kapara, as opposed to the oila. Although we learned back in the beginning of the Masech, the oila also atones for lighter sins, like ignoring a mitzvah saseh, etc. But relative to the ritzi of the chatas, it pales by significant. So therefore, the chatas is deemed more mekudesh, more powerful, and that comes first. But that's with respect to applying the dam on the mizbeach, which is the machaper component of the carbon. That achieves kapara. But interestingly enough, a vari oila koidmin leimari chatas. Suppose the dam had been already, done, applied. Now you have a vari oila, the limbs of the carbon oil which are meant to be completely burnt on the mizbeach, and you have the imurei chatas, the fats of the chatas, also meant for the mizbeach. Which one comes first in this case? The oil comes first, because the entire carbon oil is completely burnt on the mizbeach. Explains Rashi, v'tzad ribui kedushu zel mizbeach. It's more connected to the mizbeach. It's completely burnt in the mizbeach. It takes priority over the chatas materials. So dam, chatas goes first. Animal parts, oil comes first. What about chatas versus the asham? They both typically come to atone. So here we have a tricky. Which one comes first? Chatas kedemes la'asham. Chatas goes first. Mneisha dama nitan l'dalat karnes v'ala yisoid, because there are elements in the chatas unfound in the asham. Firstly, the dam of the chatas is placed throughout all four corners of the mizbeach, and the asham doesn't have that advantage. It's only placed on the two opposite corners, which spread into four. V'ala yisoid, and likewise, it's only by the chatas versus the asham, where the Torah explicitly states that the leftovers are put on the yisoid, so it has that advantage. What about an asham versus a taida? This is an easy one, because the asham is a higher level carbon outright. It's kadesh kadashim, as opposed to the taida, which is kachim kalim, right? So asham kaida with taida ve'el nazir, and the carbon that the nazir brings, it may show kadesh kadashim, because the asham considered kadesh kadashim. More restrictive, more sensitive, a higher carbon. Now within kachim kalim itself, we have the taida ve'el nazir versus a shlamim. Which one's first? Koidmim. They come before the shlamim. Why? Number one, the Toida and the Il Nazir have a shorter time span in terms of consumption. You can only eat them for a day, for today and tonight, as opposed to the Shlam that can be stretched until tomorrow as well. So the more delicate, the more holy, the shorter and tighter time period it has. Number two, Tunin Lechem. The Toida and El Nazir come along with baskets of bread, as opposed to the Shlamim. Continues the Mishnah, Shlamim koidmin lebachar. Shlamim come before bachar, neshehin kotun matan dalad. In contrast to the dam of the bachar, which is just applied once on the mizbeach. The shlamim needs two applications. Usmicha. Shlamim needs to have smicha done to it. Unusachim comes along with nusachim, with tunufas chaz v'sheik, the waving of the chaz v'sheik, elements not found by the b'char, indicating that a shlamim, in fact, is a higher carbon. Ha-b'char kodim l'masra. Firstborn kosher animal, the b'char, comes before the masra behema. That's the 10th animal that is designated as a carbon. Why does b'char come first? Because it's an inborn natural kedusha. He's born with it. Right? He gets born with that kedusha as opposed to maser, which is only generated later. Number 2, v'nechel kohanim, in terms of consumption. A b'char is meant strictly for kohanim to eat, which is indicative of its higher kedusha. What about an animal, maser behema, versus birds, bird karbanis? Ha-maser koidim loifes. Why? Zevach. Number 1, the maser is considered zevach. Rashi explains, zevach means it's shechted, zvichas sakin, as opposed to the bird which has only malika. Why is zvichas sakin considered higher? Says Rashi, Zevachim chashivi. An animal carbon is considered on a higher level. Shemitzvasan meruba, shel kol karbonis bayin mehen. It's a broader, reaching carbon and encompasses many more types of carbonis, and therefore is considered higher. V'yesh b'kadosh hakadosh, damay ve'murav. Number 2, in contrast to the bird, let's say the chatas ha'oif, where only the blood of the chatas goes in the mizbeach, by the maser behema animal, there are 2 elements of a kadosh hakadoshim, which means strictly mizbeach material. Number 1, blood. Number 2, the imura. So it has that advantage. Ha'oif is kohen l'menachos. Kohen is faced with birds or mincha. Which one does he do first? Birds come first, because it's part of the dam, blood category of karbonis. And once again, Rashi says kaparos and meruba has a broader reach. There are many more variations within the blood family versus the mincha, right? And it's machaper more. Minchas choyte kaidim minchas nedava. What about 2 types of mincha? One that a sinner brings to atone for a chet and a donation. The choyte comes first because of its atonement capacity. And finally, what about 2 birds? Chatas oif versus oilas oif. Chatas oif kedemes, oilas oif, as we're going to see in the Gemara. Likewise, you are magdish the chatas before the oilas, so that's what you label first, and then the oil. Says the Gemara. Let's just pick up where we left off. The last item in the mission. We'll go back to the first item. In terms of chatas versus the oil, both animal karbonis, Mishnah says dam chatas takes priority over the dam oil. How do we know this is true? Manan amilu. Okay, so in terms of the dam, chatas is first. In terms of the evarim, just the opposite, right? Evari oila, akoidmin, come before imuri chatas. How do we know this is true? Tanarabah. This is a pasuk by the Levium when they inaugurated the Levium to their service in the Mishkan. They brought 2 karbanis, 2 cows, 1 oila, 1 chatas. Now the chatas wasn't for atonement; it was just part of the inauguration process to prepare them for their service. So the pasuk reads, "Uparsheni ben bakar tikach chatas." The second one is a chatas. Why mention the number 2? Im balalam shem shnayim, to teach us that we have 2 karbanis. Oh, it's obvious from the psukim. Whenever already says va'aseh echad chatas v'echad oila, right? Do one as a chat, one as an oila. Clearly there are 2. Matam aloymar. What's the point of repeating upar sheni ben bakar tikal chat? The second one is a chatas. Why mention the word sheni, the number 2? The answer is to teach us order and sequence. Shiachal, I would think. Shnei chatas kodemes l'chol ma'aseh oila. If you look at the previous pasuk, where it says, do 1 chatas and 1 oila, I would think, okay, the chatas is meant to be completely processed before the oila. No, Tamalema, that's why the pasuk comes back and says, or parsheni ben bakar tikal chat. The second one is the chatas. Okay, so if it's number 2, all the way number 2. I parsheni. If only this pasuk, Yochel, I would think, te oila kedemes l'chatas l'chol ma'aseh. The oila is completely processed before the chatas. Tamalema, go back to the first pasuk. V'aseh echad chatas v'echad oila. No, it's first chat and then oila. How do we work this out? Okay, It depends what part of the korban. Blood, chatas first. Eivarim, oila first. Okay, it's adam chatas kodim lam oila. And the reason is mishum meratza, because of its atonement capabilities. On the other end, eivari oila come before the imurei chatas. And the reason was said in the Mishnah because of the kolil factor, the complete incineration element that we only find by the oil. Ask the Gemara an interesting question. Fine, I understand the dama chatas, which accomplishes kapara, certainly precedes the oil. Fine, but how many applications are we talking about? So typically the chatas has 4 applications, one on each corner of the mizbeach. But really, you don't need all 4 of them to accomplish kapara, as we learned back on Daf Lamed Ches. Merely one application does the job, right? The chatchila, you need all 4. You shouldn't skip, but if you end up only doing 1, you have accomplished kapara. So technically, only 1 is really generating kapara. Let that one come before the oil, I understand. Do 1 application, stop, go over to the oila. And then if you want, come back to the chatas. It's only really 1. For fairness sake, only 1 application generates the kapara and should precede the oila, but not the other applications of the chatas. The first application which generates kapara, take them, that should go before the oila. But not the remaining 3 applications of the dam chatas. Ravina, says Ravina, no. All 4 applications come first. Let's focus on that source. The karbonos halavim. Now, question: the chatas there was to accomplish kapara, which would indicate that only when it actually accomplishes kapara does it get that precedence. It's not true, right? We're not talking about a carbon that's actually doing kapara. So we see from there, it's just a general sequence. Yeah, generally a chatas is machaper, but it's a rule. It's an absolute rule that every chatas comes first. And therefore there's no room to differentiate between this matana and the other matana. You process the dam chatas first, period. And then go to the oil. Ravina, hacha here, b'chatas halavim askin, we speak on the chatas halavim, v'avgav dechi oil dam, even though technically it's like an oil, meaning it's not actually practically atoning for anything. And still, parshanut-torah-comment insists, he ticked him that he comes first. Okay? So the message there is that every chatas in its entirety comes first. But Rava Amri, they gave another answer. Why we would complete all 4 blood applications of the chatas before proceeding to the oil. Once he began, you just continue and complete the process. We don't abort it in the middle. Okay, so we learn from the karbonos by the levim, which entail the chatas and the oila. Then in terms of dam, chatas is first. In terms of eivarim, oila is first. Why? Because the dam chatas is machaper, way more than the oila. But in terms of the eivarim, the oila has the kolil element, which the chatas doesn't have. Now comes an interesting question. Iboilu. Dam chatas, veivari oila. One-on-one. You have a choice between processing the dam chatas, which has the mechaper capability, but you have the ivari oil on the other side, which have the kolil advantage. Which one goes first? Now we're stuck. Eizman koidem. Shall we say dam chatas koidem mishum meratza? Dam chatas takes priority because of the kapara element. Or you can say no, ivari oil koidem mishein kolil yishim. First do the oil because it has the kolil factor. Tashma. Let's try to prove it from the Mishnah, where we learned that only when it's blood versus blood does the chatas go first. Dam chatas koidem dam oila. Let's assume the dam oila hu the kodem. Yeah, the dam chatas takes priority over the dam oila because dam chatas is maratza. However, if it's dam chatas versus eivari oila, perhaps it's different. Eivari oila like kodem doesn't come first. Adrab, just the opposite. Misafel. Let's move on to the next part of the statement in the Mishnah, where you can infer in the reverse, because we have eivari oila that are koidem in the muri chatas, right? The parts of the oil come before the chatas because of the kolil. You can infer, hey, muri chatas or the kodem. In this case, the oil comes before the chatas. Lo dam chatas, however, like kodem. If it's eivari oila versus dam chatas, it doesn't go first. So it's sort of faced with conflicting diyukim, elamiho lekil mashmano, you can't infer anything from here. Yiboilu. Here comes another question. You have dam oila, which on its own is not a maratza, but it has an advantage because it's coming from a carbon which is kolel, versus veimurei chatas, the parts of a chatas, which again is not the maratza per se, but it's coming from a chatas which has greater, stronger kapara abilities than the oila. So they don't have necessarily inherent advantages over each other, but they're based, they're coming from points of advantage, relative points of advantage. Which one comes first? Does the oila comes first? The because he's coming, he's an element of a kolel carbon, or dilma a murachatas koidim, the kasim koim chaper, or the a murachatas go first because they're derived from a mechaper. So Shema, here comes an attempt at proving this one. So we have dam chatas koidim dam oila. Okay, so back again to the same halacha, the dam chatas before the oila, because it's maratza. It sounds like dam chatas with the kadam or dam oila. Only the dam of the chatas come before the dam of the oila. Avale murei chatas, but parts of a chatas, despite the fact that they hail from a mechaper, loy, they will not precede the oila. There you go. Well, adarabba. If anything, I can flip it around, be safe, and move on to the next half of that statement. Evari oila kodim lemurei chatas, right? The parts of the oila come before the chatas. So perhaps only evari oila hu dekadmi lemurei chatas. Only the evarim of the oila which have the kolel element within them, they come before the chatas. Oh, dam oila, but the dam of the oila doesn't have that inherent advantage, and it doesn't take priority. So now you're going the other way. You can't conclude anything from this Mishnah. We're not sure which way to veer it. Now comes yet a third question. You have oila versus asham. Dam oila v'dam asham. So we know that dam oila and dam chatas comes first. So in a way, asham is similar to chatas in a sense that it has kapara abilities, not as strong as the chatas, but greater than the oila. Which one comes first? Shall we say dam oila koidim the kasim koyach kalil? Dam oila is first because it's part of the kalil element, right? Part of a kalil behema. Or you can say dam asham koidim. Perhaps the dam asham takes priority. The kasim koyach machaper or the machaper, however you have the wording here. It's connected to a machaper. Which is greater than the kapara of the oila. Tashma, it comes a raya. Dam chatas koidim dam oila. Mishnah says dam chatas has priority over the dam of the oila. Let's make a diuk. Aval dam asham loy. Perhaps dam of asham does not go before dam oila. There's your answer. Well, not so quick. B'dinu di boila mistin dam asham. The Mishnah would have presented it as dam asham coming before the dam oila as well. Perhaps. Why did the Mishnah choose to refer to chata specifically? It was on account of the next halacha, where it made more sense to discuss the chatas. That's why we discussed the chatas all along. But not to say that the asham would be different. Since we wanted to carry on and say evari oila koidim and the murei chatas, that the oila parts come before the chatas parts, where it makes sense to speak about a chatas, because the itano limuri asham. Had the Mishnah said, well, the parts of the oila precede the parts of the asham instead of discussing chatas, I wouldn't know what to do with a chatas. I would think, yeah, limuri asham with the kadmi. Oila comes before the imuri chatas, the imuri asham, right? I would think limuri asham with the kadmi, the ivari oila come before the imuri asham, but if the oila is faced with the chatas, perhaps the ivari oila do not come before the chatas. The imuri chatas li kadmi. I would make that mistake, mishmachi. So to avoid that misunderstanding, Tanachatas, the Mishnah specifically brought Chatas into the fold, into the equation, to tell us that, guess what? Even when it's Oila versus Chatas, the Ivari Oila come before the Ivari Chatas. So that's the reason why we specifically mentioned Chatas, but there was no intention of treating the Asham very differently. So we don't really have a raya from here. Tashma comes another raya. Chatas Kodim Asham. So we put the Chatas before the Asham, right? So it says in the Mishnah. Chatas with the kadmei le'asham. That indicates only chatas comes before the asham. Aval oila, but not the oila. Oila can't come before the asham. And we're assuming The Mishnah is telling us that the dam of the oila will not go before the dam of the yasham. That's the answer to your question. Ma'ila dam, we're assuming that we're comparing bloods. Loy ayimurin, we're not discussing bloods. That's a different story. We're talking about animal parts. On that, the Mishnah says, chatas comes before the yasham. But perhaps when it comes to the dam, so then the halach would be that that even the oila comes before the right. We thought that the oila can't do it. Well, so you see the dam of the oila can't come before the yasham. Talking about parts. Perhaps when it comes to blood, it's different. Maybe the oila would go before the yasham. We're not sure. They could not be. In fact, I'll prove to you that the Mishnah is not speaking of blood at all here. The Tanya, because look at the wording of the Mishnah. Mishnah says, you know why chatas before asham? So we're speaking about the parts, and the parts are better because the carbon in general has an advantage. The chatas over the asham because the blood of this carbon has a broader application, goes on all the four corners, etc., not found by the asham. So clearly we're not speaking about the blood per se. We're speaking about the parts of the carbon. We're saying they have an advantage because if you look around at the rest of the carbon, at the blood of this carbon, the blood also has an advantage. So that gives the entire carbon an elevated status. So clearly we're not speaking about the blood per se, we're speaking about the parts, and they're given an advantage because of the blood that comes along that has a higher level. So clearly we're not talking about the blood per se, so it doesn't really relate to our question. Okay. So we had 3 questions which were pretty much unresolved at this point. So what do we know? We know that dam of chatas goes before dam of oila because it's maratza. We know that ivari oila before ivari chatas because it's kolol. What we don't know is, what about if it's dam chatas versus ivari oila, or dam oila versus a muri chatas, or dam oila and dam asha? We're not sure, and it appears from the Rambam that because there's no resolution, you can pretty much pick your choice and make your sequence. Okay, so next up in line is a question between chatas and asham, right? So the Mishnah says chatas comes first because of the more extensive, blood application process. Ask the Gemara, why is chatas kedemes adrabah? Just the opposite, asham kadem. If anything, the asham should go first because it's a more expensive carbon. Asham kadem shikein yesh kids, but there's a minimum value requirement. The chatas can cost you a penny, but the asham has a specific minimum requirement. Pasuk says kesef shkolim. That perhaps would indicate that it's a higher level carbon. It still says the Gemara ribui de mizbeach adif, the added mizbeach element found in the chatas, is a stronger factor to consider. And therefore the chatas comes first. What about asham versus toida? Asham kaidim le toida, because the asham is kadshei kadashim and the toida is not. Adrabah. If anything, we find an advantage in the toida not found in the asham. Toida ve'el nazar kadmi, they come first. Shekentun and lechem, because they come along with bread. They're more expensive, broader carbon. Well, afilu hachi kadosh kadashim adifi, despite their apparent advantage because of the size of their carbon, still the asham, due to its kadosh kadashim advantage over them, he takes priority. Toida vel nazar come before the shlamim. Adrabah. If anything, we can find a reason why shlamim kadmi, why the shlamim comes first. Because in contrast to the toida vel nazar, which will only come as a private offering. You can't have a public toida, a public nazar. The shlamim at times is offered as a public carbon as well. Actually, it's only once a year on Shavuos, right? The Shnei Kvasim. Shkein Yeshem Betzibur, they apply to the public just as by a Yachid. Afilu Hachi, still the advantage found in the Toida and El Nazir is greater. The fact that they're eaten only for one day, they have a shorter Zman Achila Adifi, that indicates elevation. Iboilu. Now the question is like this. Toida, right? So again, the Toida El Nazir versus the Shlamim Adifi, they're greater, they're higher. But what about the Toida versus El Nazir? If you put one against the other. Iboilu, Toida El Nazir, which was not discussed in the Mishnah. Eizmen Kodim, which one comes first? Shall we say Toida Kadma? Because Shekain Tuna Dalad Min Lechem is a contrast to the El Nazir, which doesn't have the 4 types of breads that the Toida has. That puts the Toida up ahead. Or then what you can say, El Nazir Kodim. El Nazir comes first. Shekain Yesh Imoy Damim Acher, because he's part of a greater package. The Nazir, when he completes his process, he brings the Asham, sometimes he brings Shlamim, Machatas, and a whole package of Karbanis. So since it's part of a broader package, it's a bigger deal. Toshma, here comes a Raya from a Braisa, which discusses this very point, and says, guess what? Zu kedem zu. The Toida comes before the other ones, before the Ayel Nazir, because of the bread factor. Shazu tuna dalad b'nei lechem, because the Toida requires 4 types of breads, as opposed to the Ayel Nazir, Zute Inatuna El Shtei Min Lechem, only 2 types of breads, so it's a notch below. Hashlamim Kaidmil B'char, because the Shlamim has added elements, added mitzvahs over the over the B'char. Adarabba. But if anything, B'char Kaidim, B'char should come first. Shekain Kedushas Yemerechem. The fact is, he's born that way. V'rach l'Kehanim is only for the Kehanim, so he's higher than Ishlamim in that sense. Still mitzvahs is Seir Sadif for the Ishlamim with all its accompanying mitzvahs, put it ahead of the B'char. HaB'char Kaidem to the Maser, because it's a natural Kedusha, as opposed to Maser, which is man-made. Adarabba. But if anything, Maser should be Kaidem, Shekain B'chash, Fanav L'achar. Maser has an advantage over B'char. The Kedusha of Maser can affect before and after. So the farmer was counting his animals, 1, 2, 3, mistakenly calls the 9th one 10, the 10th one 9, the 11th one 10. The halach is, as discussed in Maseches Bechiros, all 3 have a Kedusha, the 9, 10, and 11th. So you see the Kedusha of Maser can in fact spill over to before and after. Something that a Bechor doesn't have. Afiloch, still, the Kedusha Mirechem aspect of a Bechor Adifa stands higher. Maser Kaidim La'ifais. So the Maser Behema comes before bird Karbanis, because within the Maser Behema we have the Dam, the Emurim, which are Kaddish Kadoshim. Elements of that carbon, they go on the Mizbeach, so it has an advantage over the birds. Adarabba, but if anything, Oifais Kadmi. Why don't we put the birds ahead? Why? Shekain Kaddish Kadoshim. Because in a way, the bird Karbanis are more connected to Kaddish Kadoshim, Rashi explains. Because in terms of Maser Behema, right? So only the Dam and the Imuran are Kaddish Kadoshim. The rest is consumed by the Kehanim, is not considered Kaddish Kadoshim. But by, let's say, a Chatos bird, the entire thing, even the flesh, which is eaten by the Kehanim, are Kaddish Kadoshim. And certainly the Oila, which is completely Kaddish Kadoshim. Still, the Zevach factor, the Shechita animal factor found by the Maser Behema stands higher. That factor is deemed higher, more valuable than the apparent advantage that we find by the birds. Amar Avinu Bar Shila. Okay, here comes a new halach. We've just learned an interesting thing, that you can have kachim kalim, like Maser Behema, which occupies a lower tier in terms of the categories of karbanis, and within it an element of Kaddish Kadoshim. Because what is, how do we define Kaddish Kadoshim? Kadshe Hashem, completely designated as Hashem's, as Mizbeach material. So within every Kachim Kalim there's an element of Kaddish Kadoshim, which are the Emurim, right, the fats. After Zrika you take the fats, put on the Mizbeach. So although the flesh is meant for Kayhanim or for the owner to eat, and it's considered Kaddish Kalim, which can be eaten throughout the entire city of Yerushalayim, but not the Emurim. The Emurim, the fats, are not designated for Mizbeach. They're Mizbeach materials. They're elevated to a status of Kaddish Kadoshim. In fact, there's Me'ilah going forward. If one misuses them, he has committed Me'ilah. So typically we understand this to happen only after Zrika of the carbon, which is the processing of the avodah. Now the fats are ready for the mizbeach. At that point they obtain their level of kaddish kadosh, and they're susceptible to me'ilah. And if they're taken out of the azara, even the azara, which is the hakravi area, they become pasul b'yaitze. Now comes an interesting question: what if you take the imurin out of the azara before Zrika? So it's destined to become kaddish kadoshim, but it's not yet there. It's potential, but not yet actualized. Interesting question. Amar Ravina Bar Shila, you should know, Emuri Kachim Kalam, the fats of the Kachim Kalam, which are eventually destined for the Mizbeach, and to be considered Kaddish Kadoshim, but now it's still before Zrika of that carbon. Shiyatzu left the premises, Lefnei Zrikas Dam, Psulim. They become impacted. They become affected by the fact that they're taken out of the area. Because they already have that, element of a Kaddish Kadoshim embedded within them. Vitana, and this was stated Tuna by our Tana, our Mishnah as well, that they have that status already now. In contrasting the Maser Behemoth to the bird, the Mishnah says, within the Maser Behemoth, which is Kachim Kalam, you have elements of Kaddish Kadoshim, which are the blood and the Imurim. And that's why it has an advantage over bird karbanis. Now, let's take it apart. Bishlam Imurim, I understand that the fats that are found by the animals are not found by the bird. Pretty simple, less nuboifas. So that gives it an advantage. Ella dam ya'isei. But just as the Maser Behema animal has blood, which is for Mizbeach, so do the birds. So why is that stated as an advantage over the birds? Apparently it's not really so. And the only reason why the Mishnah even mentioned blood in this context, Allah Kamashman is coming to teach us something as an aside here, a side point, that you meant to know regarding, general perspective, that the imurin, the fats and blood of the Maser Behema sort of go hand in hand, have the same status. Imurin kidamai. We compare the imurin to the blood. Otherwise, why would the Mishnah even mention the blood of the Maser, which is not part of, it's sort of out of context. The teachers ma damai lifnei zrika af imurin kaidim zrika, just like when we mentioned the blood of the Maser Behema. Certainly it's before Zrika, otherwise there's no blood to speak of, right? Likewise, the Imurin referenced over here is before Zrika. So that determines the timing. We're certainly speaking before Zrika. V'kakari lo Kaddish Kadashim. And the Mishnah relates to both of them as Kaddish Kadashim. Right? So they have the same status. And therefore, it's just like if you take the blood out of the Beis HaMikdash, since it's already Kaddish Kadashim, it's meant for the Mizbeach, it becomes Pasal B'Yaitze. Likewise, they Murin. If they're taken out of the area, they become Pasal B'Yaitze. Big Chiddush from Ravina Bar Shila. A Murim, Avikachim Kalam, before Zrika, they leave the premises, they become Pasal B'Yaitze. Perhaps we can support this concept from the following discussion, which talks about basar kachim kalam. Okay, we shift to the flesh of the kachim kalam. They left the area, they left the azar before Zrika. What happens to them now? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kosher says they're fine. Now we're assuming that they came back in. Before Zrika. They left for a minute and came back in. So that's okay. They're unaffected by their exit. Rish Lakish Amar Pasal. He says, no, they become Pasal. Why? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kasha, he says it's still okay. Look, ultimately they're going to leave the area pretty soon. After Zrika, they're okay to leave the Beis HaMikdash. You can eat them throughout the city. So what's wrong with taking them out even before Zrika? As long as they're back home by Zrika, they're covered by the Zrika of the carbon. The mere fact that they left the premises doesn't really harm them. Rish Lakish Amar, no, Pasal. They become Pasal. It's premature to leave. Adayin lo yigi azman elotzi. They have no business leaving the Beis HaMikdash at this early point. Before Zrika. Now, Akan lepligil b'basar. Seemingly, this discussion relates strictly to the question of the basar that left. Alal be'imur and loy, but had the fats have left, all agree that once they leave, they become pasul, in accordance with the earlier halacha. No, who adin the mur nami pligi. Now, why would the fats be different? Because you can't apply this, this Rabbi Yechon's rationale here. The point of the flesh was, well, it's going to leave anyway, so really that's its domain. But a murin have no business leaving eventually. They belong right here. So once they leave, even before zrika, they become affected. Lo, you don't have to say that. Perhaps the same discussion and the same machlekes and the same Rabbi Yechon who allows it by the basar, allowed by the murin as well. The reason why they focused on the flesh, not to distinguish between flesh and a murin, was simply to highlight Rish Lakish's opinion that even by the basar, which eventually is slated to leave, Amar, he still insists that if it leaves at this early point in the process, it's no business leaving at this early stage, and therefore it becomes possible. Or perhaps the same machlekes would apply to a murin, and in fact Rabbi Yechon would allow it. Perhaps this question connects to a machlekes Tanaim. A murin kachim kal. Oh, now we shift back to the murim of the kachim kal. Sheyatzu from Yitzchak Hasdam that left the premises before zrika. Rabbi Lezer Eimer ein me'yalam behem. He says even after you do zrika, me'ila does not get applied to these emurim. Because once they left the area, they're disconnected from the carbon. And likewise, vein chayav and alim misham pigel, even if the carbon becomes pigel, these emurim do not share that fate. As we learned many times, that the pigel status only applies if the pigel process was successfully completed. It's like a successful failure, right? Which means to say that you need to process the dam, and then you have pigel activated. But these emurim that left the Beis HaMikdash before zrika, they disconnected from the whole process, including the zrika, so they're not affected by pigel. Likewise, noiser doesn't apply to them even if they're left past their time. Rashi explains noiser only applies to edible flesh, which is meant to be eaten within the time. Don't eat it past the time, but doesn't apply to these items. But tell me, likewise, if a person, while he's impure, eats these things, again, there's no chiv of kares, because that only applies to edible, proper carbon materials, as opposed to these things which are, disabled from day one. They're out of the area, they became pasul, they're not even ready for the mizbeach. That is Rabbi Lezer's sheet. If you're out, you're disconnected. No, he says the zrika that eventually is going to be done activates Mila even on these emurim that had left the area before zrika. They're incorporated into the whole process with all its manifestations. Now let's assume when they left but they came back and they were present in the Mikdash during the zrika. The only issue is whether that exit, temporary exit, disables them, which is really, subject matter of our discussion as well, right? My love, we're assuming with the hadad ailinu pligu. That machlekes pertains to where they were brought back into the premises during the zrika. And it's just a question of how to deal with the fact that they left temporarily before the zrika. Ubal pligi. And the machlekes pertains to this very point. The marasava misli b'yetze. Well, as it says, once they leave the area, even for a moment, they become pasul b'yetze, as per Ravina Bar Shilas halacha. Kiva says no, they don't become pasul b'yotze because they're not yet considered kaddish and kadashim until the zrika happens. So we see that actually the pre-stated halacha here is a machlekes tanaim. Amar Papa no, but the hadai linu gulam lepligi. You can speculate that in fact, if they had been returned to the Beis HaMikdash and been present during the zrika, there would be no discussion. Of course, it would be okay. The very fact that they left for a moment doesn't disable them. Unlike Ravina Bar Shilas halacha, because they're not yet considered Kaddish HaKadoshim to be affected by leaving the Mikdash. However, over here, we're speaking about a different case, but the Isnu Avroi Pligi, they're still outside the Mikdash during the Zrika, which takes place inside. And the question is, are they disconnected or not? Can they be incorporated into the process or not, due to their being outside? That's the pligi, that's the machlekes. Uba pligi, the marasava ein zrika me'elas liyotze. Reza says, you're outside, you're disconnected, zrika doesn't affect you, you're out of it. Umarasava zrika me'elas liyotze. Rekiva says, no. Fact is, you're part of this carbon, even though you're outside, in the wrong location, we can address you as well. Okay, so it's a totally new machlekes. We discussed a case where the imurim of Kachim Khan left the area and came back before zrika. And the question was, that moment outside, does it affect him? That's one question. Here we're talking about a different case, where the imurim were taken out and were stayed outside during Zrika. Does the zrika that's taking place inside help them outside? Asked the Gemara, really? Rav Papa had this perspective on the machlekes here. Rav Papa the Amar himself told us elsewhere, but the isnu b'avrei kol amar pligi, that if in fact the material is outside, there's no question that it doesn't work. But da'ilinu l'gavai pligi, machlekes relates only when they're inside during zrika. And here he says just the opposite. That when they're inside, it's okay. The question is only if they're outside during zrika. Answer is he's talking about a different thing over there, a totally different topic. Rav Papa's other explanation relates to a different scenario. That's on Shavuos. You have the karbanis with the shtei alechem, the two breads. And the same, similar machlekes applies there. If they're outside during the processing of the carbon inside, what happens to the shtei alechem? Do they become, kadash through the shchita, which typically happens when they're inside? Now they're outside. Can they benefit from the hakrava, from the zrika or not? So we have machlekes there as well between the same Rebbe Lezer and Rekiva. Rebbe Lezer says they don't become kadash. Rekiva says they do. And on that, Rebbe Papa comes and explains and says that all agree if they're sitting outside during zrika, it's gone. They can't really connect to the carbon. That's only about a shtei alechem that he says that. Because ultimately it's not part and parcel. It's not the same entity as the animals. So in that case, all agree. If they're outside, then they're disconnected. But in our case, we have the facts, the innards of this very animal that's inside. Part of the carbon that's inside. So in this case, Rav Papa holds that even if they're outside during the zrika itself, you can still say that perhaps it can benefit from the zrika, and in fact that's a Rekiva's shita. Okay, but if they were taken out for a moment and brought inside by the zrika, Rav Papa holds that it wouldn't be an issue according to all shitas. Okay, so bottom line is, you have the kachim kalim carbon, which has components of kaddish kadashim like the emurin, but are only suitable for mizbeach purposes after the zrika of the carbon, after the processing of the avodah, of the kapara, whatever. At that point, me'ilah springs upon the emurin. At that point, it's suitable for mizbeach. At that point, right, it's considered kaddish kadashim. What happens if it's taken out of the azar before zrika and brought back in? Ravina Rashila tells us it still becomes possible because it already has within it that element, embedded within it that element of kaddish kadashim, and must stay in the azara. We thought we had a machlekes and a raya, and we sort of negated that and concluded that according to Rav Papa at least, the machlekes over there pertains to a different case where the material is outside even during zrika. It's a totally different topic. Okay, so in a nutshell, we discussed various levels of prioritization, various karbonis. We typically employ the tader factor, frequency factor. They both have the same frequency. We apply the mikudesh factor, and on that we have lots and lots of different variations. But the bottom line is a carbon which is broader, greater, more powerful, more encompassing, is deemed to be more mikudesh, and therefore will have priority. All the best to you, and atzlacha.